Alright, guys, so what I'm going to do for you is I'm going to talk to you about how cellular respiration happens, where it happens, what goes on in it, while you get to have a visual playing in the background while I'm talking about it. So, here it is. Before glucose can be converted into ATP, it has to be broken down into two pyruvate molecules. This process is known as glycolysis. Glycolysis takes place in the cytoplasm and can occur without the presence of oxygen, known as anaerobic. And its primary energy source, it makes the most primary energy source, from which is ATP. It consumes two ATP molecules, but makes four ATP molecules and two NADH2 molecules. Um, The pyruvate produced in glycolysis undergoes further breakdown through a process called aerobic respiration in most organisms. This process requires oxygen and yields much more energy than the glycolysis. Aerobic respiration is divided into two processes known as the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain. Um, the Krebs cycle basically is when the pyruvate molecules produced during glycolysis they contain a lot of energy, and in between bonds between the molecules. In order to use that energy, the cell must convert it into some form of ATP. To do so, pyruvate molecules are processed through the Krebs cycle, also known as the citric acid cycle. This Krebs cycle has 9 steps in it, um, forming the uh, forming the ATP. Because glycolysis produces two pyruvate molecules from one glucose, each glucose is processed through the Krebs cycle twice. For each molecule of glucose, 6 NADH2, 2 FADH2, and 2 ATP are produced. And after you go through the Krebs cycle, you go into the electron transport chain, which you just saw. What happens to the NADH2 and the FADH2 produced during the Krebs cycle? Well, the molecules have been reduced, receiving the high energy electrons from the pyruvic acid molecules that were dismantled in the Krebs cycle. Therefore, they represent energy available to do work. These carrier molecules transport the high energy electrons and their accompanying hydrogen protons from the Krebs cycle to the electron transport chain in the inner mitochondrial membrane, from which is the light blue area on the slideshow here, and a number of steps utilizing enzymes in the membrane. NADH2 is oxidized to NAD, sorry, and FADH2 is FAD. The high energy electrons are transferred to um, ubiquinone and citricum molecules, the electron carriers within the membrane. The electrons are then passed from molecule to molecule in the inner membrane of the mitochondrion, losing some of their energy at each step. The final transfer involves the combining of electrons in H2 atoms, the oxygen, to form water. The molecules that take part in the transport of these electrons are referred to as electron transport chains. Sorry for the little stuttering there. The process can be summarized as follows: the electrons that are delivered to the electron transport system provide energy to pump the hydrogen protons across the inner mitochondrial membrane to the outer compartment. This high concentration of hydrogen protons produces a free energy potential that can do work. That is, the hydrogen protons tend to move down the concentration gradient from the outer compartment to the inner compartment. However, the only path that the protons have through the enzyme complexes within their inner membrane. The protons therefore pass through the channel lined with enzymes. The free energy of the hydrogen protons is used to form ATP by phosphorylation. Bonding phosphate to ADP is an enzymatically mediated reaction. Uses enzymes pretty much. Since the electrochemical osmotic gradient supplies the energy, the entire process is referred to as chemiosmotic phosphorylation. Sorry for the pronunciation error there. Once the electrons, they're originally from the Krebs cycle, have yielded their energy, they combine with oxygen to form water. If the oxygen supply is cut off, the electrons and hydrogen protons cease to flow through the electron transport system. If this happens, the proton concentration gradient will not be sufficient to power the synthesis of ATP. This is why we and other species are not able to survive long without oxygen. So basically, the whole point of cellular respiration is to give our body energy and produce ATP. While it does consume ATP, it yields a greater amount of ATP than it consumes. CO2 is a waste of cellular respiration, but yeah, those are the three parts of cellular respiration. Thanks.